Hi, good evening, everyone. I can see a lot of people are signing in, and that's really wonderful. It's an absolute privilege and pleasure to be a part of the Delhi Food Walks talk this evening. My name is Mini Ribeiro, and I'm a food writer, food critic, and consultant. Everything about food is what really excites me. I love writing about it, I love cooking food, and of course, I love eating food. And today I'm going to be talking about Goan cuisine, which is very, very close to my heart. Regional Indian cuisine actually excites me, perhaps a little more than Western cuisine. And Goan cuisine, of course, it's something that I cook at home, something that I eat, and something that I'm really well versed with and very familiar. But actually, to give an overview of Goan cuisine is something which is really difficult, and perhaps I'm only going to be able to touch the tip of the iceberg because it's something which is really vast and humongous. So perhaps, people are asking me my name. For those who signed in late, my name is Mini Ribeiro, and I'm a qualified journalist from IIMC Delhi, and I write on food. I've been writing on food and beverage for 32 long years. So let's carry on with the overview of Goan cuisine. And the first and foremost thing that I'd like to obviously tell you all is, undoubtedly I'm sure all of you agree that Goan cuisine is one of the most flavorsome and palate tickling cuisines. Have you ever really stopped to wonder why? Of course, it is the ingredients, like in any other cuisine, that contribute to its flavorsome dishes really. But what is it that about the ingredients that really sets it apart? Contrary to popular belief, Goan cuisine is not really about complex ingredients. Simplicity is the key to this cuisine. Yes, absolutely. All the three cuisines of Goa, which is the Gaud Saraswat cuisine, the Catholic or Christian cuisine, and the Goan Muslim cuisine, all these three cuisines actually exemplify this. Thankfully, there's nothing complex about any of these three cuisines, and they're all based on fresh local produce, homemade styles of cooking, and freshly ground masalas. Yes, that to my mind is the key in Goan cuisine, which really separates it from many others. You actually use packet masalas or masalas that have been made sort of and kept for a while, and you will actually find a difference in the flavor profile. Whereas masalas which are freshly ground, as we call removing masalas in Goan cuisine, and you will actually find a difference in the taste and flavors for sure. So first let's talk about the Gaud Saraswat cuisine. Typically, the moment we talk about Goan cuisine, the first things that really come to our mind are shakuti, kafrial, vindal, sorpotel, isn't it? Yes, these dishes have achieved cult status primarily because they are very, very popular, and perhaps the shacks in Goa have actually contributed in a large way to its popularity. The moment any of us go into Goa, we want to go to the shacks and we want to try out fish curry, rice, sorpotel, pork chili fry, so on and so forth. But trust me, there is much more to Goan cuisine, and as I said earlier, the Gaud Saraswat cuisine is something which is not too popular because it's actually confined to the realms of Saraswat homes. They haven't really come out and spoken too much about it. They haven't really come out and done too many things around this cuisine, and they have actually kept it confined to their homes. But now, thankfully, people have started documenting these recipes. They're actually coming out and doing pop-ups and various other food festivals, and so more of us actually are getting well versed with the Saraswat cuisine. The Saraswat cuisine, apart from being vegetarian, which of course is the mainstay of this cuisine, they're also fish eaters or seafood eaters, as many of us might know that when they moved from the banks of the river Saraswati and they actually came and migrated to Konkan, Karnataka, Mangalore, Goa, etc., they actually started eating fish because they were allowed to do that. Their river had disappeared, there was a famine, and their guru actually allowed them to eat fish, which was considered to be a fruit of the seas. So they are essentially fish eaters as well. But vegetarian fare is something which is very typical of the Gaud Saraswat cuisine, and the dishes are very typical, very characteristic, and very, very unique. What are the kind of vegetables that they use? Methi, a lot of lentils, pulses, all the gourds, the ash gourd, the bitter gourd, the ridge gourd, all of those, and a lot of root vegetables are what the Saraswats primarily use. Their cooking techniques are very simple, could be shallow frying, could be a stir fry, nothing very complex, and they let the ingredients shine, and they actually let no masalas really overpower the taste of these dishes. That is what is really key, and that's what really sets it apart. Another important thing about the Saraswat cuisine is that sourcing the right ingredients during the right season is very, very critical, because till you do that, you're really going to alter the flavor profile of the dishes, and that is something that they don't really want to do. So it's very important that you keep the flavors intact by using less is more is actually the mantra in Saraswat cuisine. They are known for their non-vegetarian dishes also, primarily seafood, fish as I said, and they're huge prawn lovers. They love to add prawns even to their beans. A stir-fried dish with beans is what they make, called the tonak, and that is where they use prawns again. The prawns human or the tisriya human is a yellow curry, a bit spicy, extremely flavorful. It's something that they're very, very proud of, and what really sets apart the Saraswat cuisine. Primarily the ingredients in Goa across cuisines are same, naturally, because they are all local ingredients that people take pride in using. So whether it is rice, coconut, the locally grown vegetables, of course each cuisine uses it differently, but the ingredients are all very typical. Cashews, jackfruits, these are used abundantly in this cuisine, albeit in different ways. While the saring agent for the Saraswats is typically tamarind or kokum, the Goan Catholics or the Goan Christians actually make use of vinegar, which is the toddy vinegar. So that's a very, very key differentiation in the two cuisines. Else, both of them use a lot of rice, both of them use a lot of saring agents, a lot of vegetables. But yes, the Goan Catholics make use of a lot of meat, pork, beef, chicken, and various other meats is what they primarily use, apart from certainly fish and seafood. This is a cuisine which is very, very flavorful, replete with flavors, but the key here is to be able to use the right spices in the right proportion. Removing masalas is something which I mentioned a bit earlier, and it's very important that you remove the right amount of masalas for a particular dish. You roast them to the right extent, you can't overdo the roasting, and then you grind them. That's typically the base of most Goan dishes, but it's very important to know how much and where to stop. That really alters the flavor profile, and that is something that you master over years of practice and trying out these dishes. That is exactly how I have learned this. Coming back to the Goan or the Saraswat cuisine, apart from vegetables and of course seafood, which I've already mentioned, they make use of a lot of desserts in their cuisine, but it's either vermicelli, rice flour combined with that, semolina, and of course a lot of cashew nuts liberally used in their dishes. Halvo or halwas are very common, and of course foi or rice flour, which is pounded rice, is actually used liberally in this cuisine, especially in desserts. Coming on to the Goan Catholic or the Christian cuisine, which is something all of us are conversant with, or it's perhaps the most popular cuisine only because it's sort of a little more known than the other cuisines. It's a cuisine which is again redolent with flavors, lots of variety, but again the flavors are very, very simple, and the techniques as well. This cuisine certainly is an amalgamation of the East and West, and we certainly owe the origin of this cuisine to the Portuguese influence, which of course was there prevalent from 1510 to 1961. It was a long period of time, and when the Portuguese came in, they made sure that they brought along with them a lot of ingredients, a lot of things that they were using, and which they used sort of, when they came in, they brought along stuff that they were used to, and slowly and surely these were sort of introduced into the cuisine of Goa to the locals. And of course, as we all know, most of the locals, or a large chunk of them, were converted to Christianity, and there was a key distinction between the Christian cuisine and what the local Hindus ate. For example, pork was something which the people who were converted to Christianity were compelled to use and eat, and so they actually became meat eaters, and they started eating a lot of pork and started incorporating a lot of pork dishes into their dietary habits. And also an interesting thing was the addition of salt while cooking rice. Most of the people earlier used to not use salt when they cooked rice, but the Christian community was compelled to use salt when they were cooking rice, and that is how the Portuguese actually distinguished between the Christian community and the Hindu community. So meat dishes certainly form the core of the Goan Catholic cuisine, but of course there are a lot of vegetarian dishes also. Sorpotel, vindal are typical dishes, kafrial, which I'm sure all of you are very, very familiar with, and we all sort of tend to eat these when we go to Goa for holidays. But trust me, whatever you eat in shacks is not always 100% authentic dish compared to what you will actually get in a Goan home. So get yourself invited to a Goan home the next time you are in Goa, and trust me, you will actually experience the true flavors of Goan cuisine. A lot of masalas in Goa are actually ground along with vinegar, meaning vinegar is added to these masalas when we are grinding these, and that actually lends a very, very interesting and unique flavor to the dishes. The flavor is very distinct, tart, tangy, but the toddy vinegar in fact is a kind of a sweet sour vinegar, and with a lot of effervescence. It's extremely light and it imparts a very unique flavor. The moment you change the vinegar in a Goan recipe, you've actually altered the flavor profile completely. What else do we talk about in terms of Goan Catholic cuisine? Loads of meat dishes, lots of vegetarian dishes too. You have, these days you have versions of shakuti which are originally not really vegetarian, but now you have a mushroom shakuti, and lots of vegetables have come in as well. But cabbage fogat again is something which is very typical in Goan households, and it's nothing but a simple stir-fried cabbage dish tempered with perhaps a lot of mustard seeds and a lot of grated coconut sprinkled on it. So these are typically Goan Catholic dishes, and of course one can't possibly talk about Goan Catholic dishes without talking about the things that we pair them with. Goan food is typically paired with, of course, the Goa red rice, which is what somebody is also asking me. So you have it with Goan red rice. You of course have it with sannas, which are basically kind of rice cakes, or they're actually kind of idlis, but they're fermented with toddy, and that sets it apart. And of course a lot of breads. Breads again bring me to the fact that that's something which is again something which came into the cuisine of Goa through the Portuguese. They taught the local Goans how to make the various breads, and initially they were all fermented with toddy, and over a period of time, of course, people have started using various other fermentation techniques, but the true flavors of Goan bread come in only when you're actually fermenting them with toddy. So that is something which the Goans yet again learned from the Portuguese, apart from obviously imbibing various ingredients into their diet through the Portuguese: tomatoes, chilies, potatoes, pumpkins, aubergines. These are all things which the Portuguese introduced to the Goan cuisine. And interestingly, although the Goans amalgamated this to their cuisine, there was obviously, these assumed different kind of flavor profiles when actually these recipes were passed on to the local Goan women, and perhaps some of these were lost in translation. Some of these were not actually used to the T or actually followed to the T, simply because a lot of those ingredients were not available locally. So there were local substitutes which were cleverly integrated into this cuisine. And of course the vindal, or the vindalu as most people call it, pork vindal as we call it, is something which is a typical example. While it was actually a pork stew which was, used with a lot of garlic, and it was marinated in, wine. Obviously, the locals did not really use that or did not have access to it. So they started using, toddy vinegar instead, and the Portuguese actually approved of it, and hence, over a period of time, it actually became a dish which is now almost synonymous with the Goan cuisine, but actually owes its origin to Portuguese cuisine, and of course, it's a dish which is, popular across the world. What else do we talk about Goan cuisine? I will come back to the Goan Catholic cuisine a little later, but we should even briefly touch upon the Muslim cuisine of Goa, which of course originally owed its origin to Arabic, Turkish and Persian influences, and there were a lot of ingredients also which were used, but thankfully at the moment, we don't really get many of those ingredients sometimes, and so over a period of time, the local Muslim people of Goa have also taken to the local cuisine, which is obviously their own, and they use a lot of local ingredients which they have, integrated and amalgamated into their dishes, and it's one homogeneous, cuisine that we sort of all of us kind of really eat. Okay, interesting. It's nice to see a lot of people have are signing in, and people are asking questions. So please feel free if you have any queries about Goan cuisine, because of course the Goan Catholic cuisine is extremely popular. It's something which most of us, even people who are non-Catholics and non-Christians, enjoy this cuisine. But as I said, the key to this cuisine is actually the simplicity of its ingredients, the freshly ground masalas, local produce, which is really intrinsic to the flavors of this cuisine. A little bit of variation in the masalas and the whole flavor profile can change. Here I will talk about one of the masalas which is very typical of the Goan Catholic cuisine. Of course, everybody uses peppercorns, cloves, dalchini and all of that in Goan cuisine and across India in fact. But in the Goan Catholic cuisine, jeera mere is a very, very important masala which is always there in a Goan household. It's nothing but jeera or cumin seeds and mere, which is kali miri or peppercorns, that is used. It's pounded and ground together and used in a lot of Goan dishes, and it comes handy when it's kind of ready, and a lot of people sort of make it in advance. Some people make it fresh while they are cooking, but it's extremely important to have this in a Goan household. Of course, there are other flavor combinations also of different kind of masalas, but depending upon whether we are having our orange curry, as we call it, which is, or a ambotik or a kafri al masala, but these are generally freshly ground. The spices primarily remain cloves and garlic, ginger, peppercorns, cumin seeds, but of course in different combinations and different proportions. Sometimes these are roasted and then ground, sometimes they are ground first, and so the various treatments or the techniques may differ from dish to dish, but primarily these are the masalas, and these are also common to the Muslim cuisine and also to the Gaud Saraswat cuisine. The masalas, the spices remain the same because they're all locally available as well, but the flavor combinations change and the proportions change according to the dish that we are preparing. Coming to Goan desserts, of course, I think everybody is familiar with the Christmas sweets that Goan Catholic families make, but of course there is much more to Goan desserts than just those. Of course, you have your marzipans and your kalkals and your nyoris and your dodals and your bibings, but there are other Goan sweets as well. Bibing, I think, is a universally a favorite, a very, very laborious dish, a lot of layers, takes a lot of time, very tedious to bake. So fewer families are nowadays making it, and if people in Goa, tourists who come into Goa and they want to taste the real bibing, you must not really buy the ones ready from a shop, but you must actually pre-order these, and a lot of Goan ladies at home make these, and you will actually get the real Goan bibing. Semolina, eggs, flour, rice flour, these are typical ingredients that go into a Goan dessert, and of course oodles of Goan jaggery. The jaggery of Goa, the black pyramid jaggery, is something which I'm sure all of you are familiar with, whether you go to a Mapsa market or a Panjim or a Madgaon. and this is what really sets the flavor of these dishes apart. Sometimes we don't get these ingredients very easily in other places, so the flavor profile changes. But so if you actually want to make a typical Goan dessert which entails the use of jaggery, you must try and source the Goan jaggery, because that makes a huge difference. Dodol, pinna, bath, these are typical Goan desserts which are made on various occasions, not only Christmas, various festive occasions, and sometimes even regularly in Goan households. But of course, most of these desserts are very, very laborious, and one can't really make them every other day. So what is it that people would like to know? Somebody is asking me similarities between Goan and Mughlai cuisine. Well, not really. I would not say that there are similarities between Goan and Mughlai cuisine really, but of course some of the spices that are used are similar, but the cooking techniques, the richness of the gravies in Mughlai cuisine are not something which are very typically used in Goan cuisine. Our curries are comparatively lighter. Yes, we do use coconut in all its forms. In fact, we use coconut milk, and we use grated coconut, and we use we grind the coconut, and we use the different we use the first extract and the second, and so on and so forth. We dilute it, and but we don't. That is what really imparts a thickness to a Goan gravy, which would be a little different from Mughlai gravies, which are either sort of made with a cashew paste or cream or other rich ingredients, and even the treatment of these ingredients are different. So I wouldn't really say that Goan cuisine and Mughlai cuisine is really too similar. And of course, it's very, very important to make sure that the right treatment is given to your ingredients, which of course is important. Drying your masalas in the right season, storing them, and putting them away for various for the monsoon season, which is really around the corner. And perhaps like everywhere else, Goans eat seasonal food, and the requirements and what we eat and what we can source also changes. So monsoons, it's typically something where kismur or dried prawns is something which Goans, which is along with garlic and coconut and chilies and onions. It's something, it's kind of kept aside, made and kept aside, and along with our regular food, we sort of eat a little bit of kismur alongside during the monsoons, when you can't really have access to fresh fish all the time, and with the heavy rains in Goa. So kismur is something that really gives us that seafood taste to our palate during the monsoon season. And another thing which is typically eaten in Goan households, monsoon or even otherwise, is pez, or which is really the rice gruel or kanji as we call it. It's basically the Goan red rice, and you sort of eating the kanji, you cook the rice in that water, and you're eating that gruel. And to give a little bit of taste to your palate, you sort of just use a bit of pickle to it, and trust me, it makes a very, very wholesome and flavorful meal, and you really don't miss anything else. It's a very satisfying meal, very comforting, and you can actually sort of have that mid-morning, and trust me, you're not going to feel hungry till about lunchtime. Another interesting dish which I don't know which too many people really know about is something called the samrachi kodi, which I would like to speak about. Samrachi kodi is a dish which is kind of made with dried shrimps and fresh shrimps, and a whole lot of masalas are used in this dish. It's laborious to prepare, fairly elaborate, but has a very, very distinct and unique taste. Apart from it being made, any other time, it's a dish which is actually made on a very special occasion before a couple gets married. Generally, a Tuesday before they sort of their marriage, they actually pay homage to the ancestors who have passed away in their family, to the elders in the family who are no longer there, and they actually invite people from a similar age group, tallying with the age group of the people who have passed away in the family. These could be less fortunate people, poor people, and it's called Vikaricha John. So it basically means a meal for the beggars, really, or for the poor people, and the couple actually serves this meal themselves to the people who are made to sit with a lot of respect, and it's served on plantain leaves or jackfruit leaves, and the meal is actually a very very elaborate meal with a lot of dishes, and along with cashew feni, and samrachi kori is a dish which is actually served that day. What is very interesting about the samrachi kori is the fact that apart from the ingredients that go into the dish, some families still follow the tradition of actually placing a Mangalore tile in this dish. Yes, you don't really eat that tile, but you actually place this tile in the dish while you are cooking this dish it actually symbolizes that we come from the soil, and that's where we all go back. So this Bangalore tile adds a unique flavor, and it's still followed in many families, especially in Goa. So samrachi kori, I thought, was a very very interesting dish which not too many people outside Goa, or unless you belong to a Goan family or have close access to a Goan family, you would not really know about this dish. So this is something which is very unique to the people of Goa. Fish, prawns, seafood, meat are things that we regularly eat. Oodles of coconut come into our house every day, and there's no Goan house which can actually be devoid of coconuts. We use a lot of these. We use a lot of jaggery, we use a lot of spices in our cuisine, and these are all freshly ground, giving a very simple flavor to the cuisine. Also, this sort of brings me to the fact that the spices in earlier days, some families even follow that today, are actually ground on a grinding stone. All of us know in cities that we use shortcuts, we use mixers and grinders and all of that, but trust me, the flavors are not the same. So in olden days, the grinding stone, that huge big grinding stone, was called the varn, V-A-R-N, and that's where people used to actually hand grind the spices freshly just before using it, roasting it for a curry or for the various preparations, and that would really make a lot of difference to the taste of the dishes. Not too many people use it, but yet in families it is still there in people's kitchen. It occupies a pride of place, as do the earthen pots or the clay pots in which very many people in Goan families still cook. These are actually, obviously when you're cooking in an earthen pot, this is porous, so the flavors actually seep in, and you will actually find the difference of a fish curry or a prawn curry cooked in an earthen pot vis-a-vis a Goan prawn curry or fish curry which is cooked in any other kind of aluminium or steel or other kind of vessels. So these do impart a very very special flavor, and there is obviously a way that you maintain these earthen pots and you cook in them, but fortunately in my original family home they still sort of use these, and it actually imparts a very unique flavor, and those curries never taste the same when we cook them at home in Mumbai, trust me. Yes, what else can I touch upon? As I said right in the beginning, this is really the tip of the iceberg. It's a very very vast topic, it's a very vast repertoire of dishes, so it's very difficult to possibly touch upon all the dishes, and I'm not getting into the kafriyas and the vindals and the sorpotels and the regular ambotiks and the curries, but trying to tell you the lesser known nuances of Goan cuisine. And as I've told you earlier, each cuisine makes use of similar ingredients, literally vegetables from the backyard and spices which are easily accessible and available, but at the same time the treatment to these, how these are cooked, is very very important, and that is what really separates each dish from the other. The balance of spices, how much to use, is very critical, and that I think is something which one really sort of learns over a period of time. How much should you roast it, till what stage, when should you remove it, you should cool it, and how you should sort of grind the spices, and to what, even the textures of grinding, should it be very coarse, should it be very fine. These are things which actually make a lot of difference to the taste, and hence sometimes when you go to a restaurant and something is passed off as Goan cuisine, people who are like us, who are familiar with the cuisine, we realize that these are not the real flavors, and it's not as if the ingredients are incorrect, it's the manner in which the ingredients have been sort of dealt with in terms of how they've been ground, how they've been roasted, how much has been used, makes a lot of difference. Chilies, of course, play a vital role in Goan cuisine, But while the vindal or the vindaloo, the pork vindaloo as most people call it, actually gets a very fiery red color, which is actually from the use of Kashmiri chilies. But trust me, it's not meant to be a very fiery dish, well spiced, well flavored, but not extremely spicy. Tart, tangy, the balance of flavors here is perfect. Again, another local chili that is extremely pungent is the small round khatti mircha, as we call it, which is used in Goan cuisine, and that to my mind is far spicier and actually sort of gives a tingle to your palate than Kashmiri chilies, which all of us know are basically more for their color and the hue, the red hue, that the rich color that they impart to dishes, which really make them appealing and enticing rather than the spiciness. The spiciness in Goan cuisine, a lot of people ask me sometimes, actually comes from peppercorns or kali miri or kali mirch, as we call it, and that is really the thing that really imparts the heat to our palate in terms of Goan cuisine. So it's not too much of chilies, there's a proper balance, but it's the mire or the peppercorns which really give the spice element to the cuisine. I'm certainly enjoying myself speaking to you about the Goan cuisine and all its elements, be it the Gaur Saraswat, be it the Goan Catholic cuisine, which as I said earlier, I'm most familiar with. And somebody is asking me 3 typical Goan dishes, part of the main course that you should sample. Okay, I presume you're talking about the Catholic cuisine. Well, if you are a meat eater, I would certainly recommend the chicken kafrial or the galina kafrial, as it is called, which is basically a dish. It's kind of a grilled chicken dish with an interesting marinade of coriander, chilies, cinnamon, garlic, and various other spices. And this is kind of just pan-seared and cooked. And this dish, interestingly, Shabnam, owes its origin to, it actually comes from Mozambique. And this is something which has obviously become our very own, and be it any occasion or be it even regularly, we sort of have it fairly regularly at home. So that's certainly one. If you are a fan of pork, I would certainly recommend the vindal, which of course you must try if you haven't already. And of course, my favorite, the sheath kori or the Goan curry rice, the fish curry rice or prawn curry rice, is certainly something very, very close to my heart. Very simple, very comforting, and very flavorful. If you're talking about vegetarian food, of course you can have a vegetarian version of shakuti. These days people make a very delicious mushroom shakuti. I still prefer the mutton or the chicken, I must confess. And of course, cabbage fogat is something that you can have. There is kaldeen, which is again a yellow turmeric based curry, a milder curry compared to most other Goan curries, and vegetables are very much added to the kaldeen. So while a lot of people have the prawn kaldeen or they want to have a seafood kaldeen, you can certainly have a kaldeen with vegetables also. Pair this with red rice, or nice rustic thick Goa rice, or with the sanna, or of course our paos, pois, are the various breads of Goa, without which no Goan's day or any meal is complete, and trust me, you have a great meal at hand. Breads again are something which form an integral part of our lives. People who live in Goa, of course, are aware of the fact that in Goa, your day begins with the bread person, coming from the poder or from the baker, and obviously they are the ones who sort of bring us our breads. There are pois, there are katri paos, there are the regular paos, there is kankon, which is almost like a bagel, a bangle shaped bread, and these are savored with every meal, apart from rice, of course. And this is again something which we owe the origin of bread and the technique of bread making also definitely to the Portuguese rule. They are the ones who really, the Portuguese, when they came in, they taught us how to bake the breads, and now they've become a part and parcel of our lives. Lovely to see somebody signing in from Karachi, And yes, Goan fish curry tamarind wali. Well, tamarind bhi use करते हैं हम certainly. I mean, but our saring agent in most things is vinegar. But yes, in the fish curry we use kokum, we use tamarind. But the Gaur Saraswats, of course, will not trade that tamarind and kokum for anything. Since we have touched upon saring agents, tamarind, kokum, let me also tell you about bimli, which is again a very typical saring agent. It's basically a berry which is actually from the cucumber family. It sort of looks like the star fruit, and it's a saring agent, has a very distinct flavor, perhaps an acquired taste, but Goans love it. Kokum, I think everybody is familiar with, and the soul curries, and it's used in various dishes. We use it in bhindi and or okra. We use it in our curries to give it that very distinct taste and a dash of color as well. And the Gaur Saraswats use hog plums or ambade, and their dishes have a very, very delicious and unique flavor thanks to the use of hog plums which they use. So there's bimli, there is ambade, and there is kokum, there is tamarind, which are very typically saring agents, and of course the Goan Catholics use their toddy vinegar, which imparts a very, very distinct tangy tart flavor. Yes, so Goan fish curry with tamarind, yes, as I have said earlier, tamarind is a typical ball of tamarind ground along with our Kashmiri chilies, coconut and other spices is what forms the base of our fish curry, and various other spices. Definitely coconut milk, ground coconut in all its forms is celebrated in this cuisine. And another interesting ingredient which I haven't mentioned, which the Gaur Saraswats use, is the jackfruit. Both the ripe jackfruit and also the raw jackfruit. They make some delicious desserts out of that. They use it in the stir fries, and I mean, it's not really used too much in the Goan Catholic cuisine, at least not in our home for sure, but the Gaur Saraswats do justice to the jackfruit and make some delicious dishes. I have a lot of friends in Goa, Gaur Saraswat friends in whose homes I've eaten, and trust me, the stir fry is absolutely delicious. Also, the cashew fruit is very, very versatile and used in various ways in their cuisine, and which again is something that we don't really use. And they make a bibe upkari, which is really a stir fry, bibe being the cashew fruit, and that makes for a delicious stir fry, which is something people must try. But I don't think these dishes are really have come out. The Gaur Saraswat dishes are not really available too much in restaurants or shacks in Goa, as in they've actually confined themselves to the realms of Goan homes. And these dishes are absolutely priceless, delicious, and with distinct flavors, and certainly worth a try if you get a chance. So get yourself invited to a Goan home, or unless of course it's a wedding, a Gaur Saraswat wedding that you're going to. Khat khate is another dish which I'm sure many of you have heard of. It's basically a medley of lot of vegetables, seasonal vegetables, and which are sort of used. And typically they say that in a wedding household, this is generally made, when there are vegetables left over, and you sort of put them together and you make this dish, which is absolutely delicious and has a distinct flavor of its own. Kashmiri chili, okay, somebody is asking me how come the Kashmiri chili has become a part of Goan cuisine. This is again something that we owe to the Portuguese when they came in, and through all their travels, through the various trade routes that they came into Goa, they brought along with them various chilies, and slowly the Goans sort of got exposed to this, the locals, and they sort of integrated this into their cuisine. And over a period of time, since they have sort of adapted to it and adopted this chili, usage of this chili, obviously now it's become an integral part of our cuisine. I mean, so many generations down the line, and we can't possibly imagine now cooking without a Kashmiri chili. But again, as I've said, it's Kashmiri chili is more for its hue, for the color, that the appealing, enticing color that it sort of imparts, and of course a flavor, than the spice element. The spice element still comes from peppercorns and from the local ghatti mircha. Interesting to see people signing in from all parts of the city, country, and even from other places. It's absolutely heartening, and I mean, I hope I haven't overshot my time. I could actually go on and on about this cuisine, and so if there are still any more questions, I still have some amount of time left. So if there are people who would like to ask me anything specifically, people who've come across an interesting Goan dish that you might want to share, I'm so very happy to hear from you, and so very happy to answer your queries if I am equipped with those answers. In fact, Anil Raj, the point that you raised about Kashmiri chili, as I've said, that is just one of the many ingredients that we sort of owe to the Portuguese. Really, there are many other ingredients: potatoes, tomatoes, pumpkins, aubergines, even fruits, guavas, pineapples, that the Portuguese brought along with them, and now they've become part and parcel of our cuisine. Of course, these were adapted and changed, and sometimes when we did not have these ingredients, which were locally available or grown, they were sort of, we used some substitutes, but by and large, people have started following. I can tell you, for example, this habit or this, use of salt while cooking rice is something which is, sort of ingrained in us, and we cannot imagine cooking rice without adding salt when we are breaking it to the final boil. But this is not something which everybody does, but it's kind of, a habit which is almost passed down generations, and we are, constantly sort of doing this all the time. No, this cuisine does not really have a version of biryani. We have our own Goan pulaus that we make on a Sunday. No Sunday is complete without our pulaus that we make. The pulao could be a prawn pulao, it could be a pulao with vegetables, it could just be a simple pulao with a bit of green peas, a lot of whole spices, and perhaps chicken stock or vegetable stock, but not really. We don't really have a biryani, but yes, our pulaus are something which we really enjoy, especially on Sundays. I can tell you, vouch for that. Thank you very much, but a good recipe of a Mughlai cuisine, well, I would not be the right person, Mohammed, to share a Mughlai cuisine recipe, certainly not from Goa, but if there's any other Mughlai cuisine recipe that you're seeking, I'm sure the Delhi Food Walk team would be fully equipped to share their recipe with you, and I'm sure they'll connect with you. And because I'm primarily here only today to talk about Goan cuisine, so if you're talking about anything to do with the Goan cuisine or any element of Goan cuisine, I'm happy to talk about that. I'm happy to share that. But or maybe I could send across a recipe to you, but certainly at this point I would only confine myself to talking about Goan cuisine. But nice to see that people are signing in from so many various places, and I think food is something which really brings us all together, irrespective of which region of India we belong to, or perhaps even different parts of the world. So, food is something I think gourmands, or people who love food, are always together. Happy to hear people talking about food, happy to learn and share about food, because I think that's something which actually really binds us all together. Another thing that I think the Gaur Saraswats really specialize in are their desserts, as I have touched upon earlier. Mangne is a very, very typical dessert made out of Bengal gram. It's a bit similar to the Godshe that the Goan Catholics make. It's a kind of a, well, if I were to explain it very loosely, it would be similar to the chana dal paisam, as we call it. And of course, our jaggery and coconut are must additions to that, and that's what really sort of sets the flavors apart. So those are very interesting desserts that we have. Mangne for the Gaur Saraswats, and Godshe, as we call it for the Goan Catholics. And so that's a very interesting dessert, apart from the usual ones which I think people are very, very familiar with: the dodol, the dos, the pinag, of course the Christmas sweets, which are absolutely legendary. Then Bath is our semolina coconut cake, which again is a bit similar to the revani of the Turkish cuisine, but yet different, because we don't really sort of use a sugar syrup on top of the cake, whereas they do. And feni, how could I possibly not touch upon the feni? There are two types of fenis in Goa, as we all, or perhaps most of us know. There's the cashew feni and there is a coconut feni. The cashew feni is something which is very, very popular, and nobody who sort of goes to Goa actually comes without drinking feni or urak. And these are things which have a very, very distinct flavor, and they pair really extremely well with Goan food. And on a hot, sunny, or perhaps a balmy afternoon, a glass of cashew feni and your sheath kodi or Goan prawn curry or fish curry rice, and perhaps a meat dish along with it, and it would be absolutely the perfect meal. So you can't possibly go to Goa and not try the cashew feni. You must do that if you haven't already. Hi, nice to see that more and more people are still coming in and have been listening with rapt attention. It's absolutely a pleasure to interact with you all and see your queries and the questions that you have about Goan cuisine. And I have tried my best to veer away from the typical dishes that we're all familiar with, as I said at the beginning of my talk. So I hope I've added value in terms of some of the lesser known dishes that I've spoken about. And yeah, I hope you've enjoyed the talk. And if anybody still has any queries, I would be happy to answer them. We still have a little bit of time, and I'm still around, so please feel free. Pickles, of course, in Goan cuisine are important like they are in any other cuisine. And while the Goans are, of course, known for, the Goan Catholics are known for their prawn balchao, on the mole, the fish pickle, there are very interesting pickles that the Gaur Saraswats make, and trust me, they are absolutely unusual and unique. And it could be tenli, they make a very interesting brinjal pickle, and these can actually jazz up your meal, and you need nothing else but a simple dali thoy is a dal that they sort of make, and that simple dal along with one of the tenli pickles or aubergine or brinjal pickle can actually rev up your meal, as can a prawn balchao in case of a Goan Catholic meal. And that's again something which I think families make in abundance and sort of bottle and keep for the entire year, and you really enjoy it at a time when you really can't get prawns anymore. Oh, I'm glad to hear that somebody likes the coconut feni more than the cashew nut feni. That's interesting. I think it's a matter of personal taste and choice. And मैं बिल्कुल ठीक हूँ रवि, आप कैसे हैं? आई होप आपने जो मेरी टॉक थी ऑन गोअन कुजीन आपने एंजॉय की. मुझे तो बहुत मज़ा आया आप लोगों के साथ इंटरेक्ट करके, और मैं आशा करती हूँ कि मुझे ऐसा मौका दोबारा फिर मिलेगा आप लोगों से बात करने के लिए. और गोअन कुजीन के बारे में मैंने आज आपको बताया, जो कि बेसिकली गौड़ सारस्वत, Christian cuisine of Goa and the Muslim cuisine of Goa. It's three cuisines of Goa which are absolutely spectacular, similar and yet distinct. They make use of similar ingredients, perhaps a lot of common ingredients, but the cooking styles, the techniques, and how each technique is sort of executed, and how those ingredients are dealt with is what really imparts a distinct and different flavor to this cuisine. I have already spoken about विंडाल. अनिल राज, आप शायद थोड़ी देरी से आएँ. पोक विंडाल तो सवाल ही नहीं आता कि गोअन कुजीन की बात करें और हम विंडाल का जिक्र ना करें. Pork vindal is something, it's almost a universal favorite. I have so many non-Goan friends जो सिर्फ गोवा जाते हैं या घर आते हैं to eat a pork vindal. It's a very, very typical dish, where it's basically a kind of a, pork made with lots of garlic, Kashmiri chilies, and of course toddy vinegar. यहाँ मसाले हम विनेगर में बेसिकली ग्राइंड करते हैं, एंड इसी से फ्लेवर को बहुत फ़र्क पड़ता है. और दैट द टैंगी टार्ट विनेगर जो है, टॉडी विनेगर, वही विंडाल को एक बहुत डिस्टिंक्ट टेस्ट देता है। और ये वैसे तो आप बहुत किस्म के विनेगर से बना सकते हैं, पर ट्रस्ट मी फिर वो टिपिकल गोअन विंडाल का टेस्ट, वो मज़ा नहीं उस डिश में आएगा। यस, विंडाल इज़ पोक विंडाल ज़्यादातर बनाया जाता है अनिल राज, बट आप चाहें तो आप बहुत लोग हैं जो मटन विंडाल भी बनाते हैं, चिकन विंडाल भी बनाते हैं। आपकी पर्सनल प्रेफरेंस पे निर्भर करता, डिपेंड करता है। पर अगर हम टिपिकल विंडाल लफ्ज़ का अगर इस्तेमाल करें तो टिपिकली पोक विंडाल इज़ समथिंग विच इज़ अ फेवरेट इन गोअन हाउस होल्ड्स। I mean, if you are making a vindal, it's got to be a pork vindal. And even a lot of non-Goans, trust me, they enjoy a pork vindal much more than they would enjoy a mutton vindal. वैसे शाकुती भी आप ज़्यादातर मटन शाकुती बनती है, पर आप चिकन की भी बना सकते हैं, आप वेजिटेबल वर्जन भी बना सकते हैं मशरूम के साथ। कुछ लोग तो आजकल पनीर के साथ भी बनाते हैं। सो मसाला अगर आपका बेसिक सेम है तो उसके बाद आप वेरिएशंस बना सकते हैं। बट विंडाल टिपिकली मैं डेफिनेटली आपको सलाह दूंगी कि अगर आप विंडाल ट्राई कर रहे हैं, यू मस्ट ट्राई अ पोक विंडाल। बट इफ़ यू आर नॉट अ पोक ईटर, बाय ऑल मीन्स ट्राई अ मटन विंडाल और अ चिकन विंडाल। द मसाला शुड बी ग्राउंड इन गोआ टॉडी विनेगर। नो प्रॉब्लम एट ऑल अनिल राज, मैंने तो दोबारा आपको पूरी तरह से विंडाल के बारे में फिर से बता दिया है। सो आई होप दैट हैज़ आंसर्ड योर क्वेश्चन ऑन विंडाल, and I'm sure you can sort of even hear this later, and feel free to be in touch with us through Telefood Walks, and I'll be happy to answer your query on this as well. And I think I am almost running out of time, so I'm going to wind up this conversation, this talk with all you lovely people, lovers of food, gourmands, people who love cooking, love eating. So let's all continue to celebrate food. Whether or not Goan cuisine, doesn't matter. All of us love food. Every part of India, every part of the world has interesting cuisine, especially our own country, incredible India, where each region has a distinct cuisine. There's so much to learn, so much to try, so much to taste, that even one lifetime perhaps is not enough. And even what I've spoken about the Goan cuisine are things that I sort of randomly picked up and tried to highlight the lesser known things. So there is still a lot more, and you can always be in touch with me on Twitter, on Instagram. I'm on Instagram I'm on Mini Ribeiro 1, numerical 1. I'm on Twitter @Mini Rib, MINIRIB, and on various other social media platforms. And of course, feel free to read my articles that I have written across various publications on Goan cuisine, and so you can get a lot of information from there as well. And feel free to be in touch with me. I'm always happy to share anything that I know about Goan cuisine, and it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you Telefood Walks for having me deliver this talk today. It was an absolutely wonderful opportunity. I can't even believe 1 hour has gone by. बहुत मज़ा आया आप लोगों के साथ बातें करके। बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया, बहुत धन्यवाद मुझे इस अपॉर्चुनिटी और ये प्लेटफॉर्म देने के लिए। एंड हैव अ लवली इवनिंग, स्टे सेफ, स्टे वेल, और बाकी का लॉकडाउन यूँ ही गुजर जाएगा, एंड विल ऑल बी बैक टू अ नॉर्मल लाइफ वेरी सून। स्टे हेल्दी, स्टे सेफ, गुड नाइट, बाय बाय, थैंक यू।